This video aims to walk through a variety of strategies the town of Blacksburg could pursue to increase housing affordability. As a reminder, a home is considered unaffordable if a household has to spend more than 30% of its income on housing costs. For homeowners, this includes the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and utilities. For renters, this includes the monthly rent and utilities. As a recently released regional housing study points out, any family earning less than the median family income of $83,000 will have a hard time finding housing affordable to them in Blacksburg. Most housing, affordable or otherwise, is provided by the private marketplace. However, lower income households are at a great disadvantage when it comes to renting or buying market rate homes. They may have to pay excessive portions of their income or live in substandard conditions. This is why various government programs have been created to help people obtain decent, affordable homes. Unlike other government programs such as food stamps or Medicaid, housing subsidies are not an entitlement and are generally in short supply. In Blacksburg, we currently have access to two streams of public funding which help us provide subsidy for affordable housing: home and community development block grant funds. With either of these funding sources, we can only support households earning 80% or less of area median income. So think a family of four earning less than $64,000 a year. So let's talk about where these resources have been invested in our community to date to support affordable housing. Home funds are managed regionally through the New River Valley Home Consortium, to which Town of Blacksburg staff provides local administrative support. The funding amounts provided are based on the size of each locality's total population. New River Valley Home Funds have helped to leverage an additional $35 million in affordable housing investment since the consortium's creation in 2007. 54 of those homes have been built with this funding in Blacksburg. The most recent examples include the 8 rental apartments for people 55 and older on Grissom Lane, and the 7 new townhomes on the corner of Hemlock and Church Street. In the last 5 years, CDBG funds have been invested in the Bennett Hill Progress Street neighborhood. The neighborhood has been shifting from predominantly homeowner-occupied to a majority of student rentals. Many of the homes which were once affordable to first-time and lower-income homebuyers have now been gobbled up by investors. So to reverse this trend, the town has partnered with Community Housing Partners, a local affordable housing developer, to acquire, rehab, and sell these homes back to income-eligible households. In return, if these homeowners want to sell their home, they must agree to sell it at prices affordable to other income-qualified buyers. These affordability terms are legally binding for a period of 99 years before they can be resold at market rate prices. 99 years may seem like a long time, but each home requires approximately $175,000 in local investment. So knowing that these investments we worked so hard to create will eventually disappear makes us continually think about opportunities to be more effective and efficient with the resources we have. Over the last year, town staff has done a lot of research to understand what tools communities across the country are using to tackle their housing affordability problem. We've also explored which of these tools are actually feasible for us to employ under Virginia law, because in many cases what is being done in places like California or even North Carolina are just not possible here in Virginia. We are going to explore a number of these tools and strategies through the remaining video. We're going to start by exploring potential development incentives, and then we'll discuss strategies for limiting student encroachment into single-family neighborhoods. Then we'll look at strategies for developing more home ownership and non-student rental opportunities, and finish up by looking at potential mechanisms to fund our affordable housing strategies that we prefer. Let's start first with development incentives. Certain zoning and land use regulations can inadvertently contribute to the high cost of housing. They can increase costs because our current regulations favor low-density single-family development rather than our missing middle housing types. Working through these regulations as part of a proposed development review process can also increase the cost, duration, and uncertainty of a development project. The town would like to offer incentives that will be economically appealing to developers in order to create more diverse and affordable housing types. So in this section, I'm going to discuss 7 potential options. The first would be to move projects with an affordable component to the front of the line for plan review by town staff. This would help reduce financing costs and allow developers to bring these affordable projects to market faster. Given limited staff, there will still be limits on how quickly plans can be reviewed, and it will be likely that other types of development projects would take longer for approval. The second potential incentive would be to waive either the partial or the full cost of permit and planning fees or utility connection fees for development projects that include affordable housing. If this incentive is provided, the town would essentially be paying these fees instead of the developer because the fees are currently used to cover the staff time for reviewing projects and to cover the cost for bringing utilities to the home. The third potential development incentive is a density bonus. A density bonus provides an increase in the homes that can be built on any given site in exchange for a certain number of below market units in the development. This arrangement enables developers to recoup some or all of the foregone revenue associated with offering some of the units at prices affordable to low or moderate income households. The key here is carefully calibrating the bonus to make it financially advantageous to the developer so they want to use it and provide the affordable housing. The fourth incentive involves expanding opportunities for by-right development. Many new development projects, especially those seeking more density in our community, require a public hearing process. This incentive would allow for increased density and more diverse housing types in a development with affordable housing without a public hearing in exchange for a prescribed set of development standards. This would help reduce significant risk for the developer and the overall time frame of the development. The rising cost of land is contributing to increasing home prices. Allowing for development on smaller lots and reducing the distance between which two homes can be built are both incentives that can reduce the cost to develop a home and can allow for a greater mix of housing types within a development. Another large cost associated with residential developments is all the public infrastructure that goes along with it. Development incentives that allow for reduced road width and road grade requirements, or that allow for expanded cul-de-sac length, can all help to lower development costs in exchange for affordable housing. The last potential incentive would be to allow new multifamily development projects with affordable units to build fewer parking spaces than would otherwise be required under local zoning rules. For multifamily buildings, the number of required spaces is commonly linked to the total number of bedrooms, but the need can vary based on location, access to public transit, and a few other factors. So allowing for the reduction in parking spaces could reduce construction costs for larger development projects. Okay, in this next section, let's talk about how best to address a major concern expressed in the first 2 surveys: student encroachment into single-family neighborhoods. Although there is a lot of student housing being built right now, which is concerning to many, the town has actually already restricted the areas that can be developed or redeveloped for purpose-built student housing. The primary way we could approach student encroachment in other types of developments is through voluntary proffers. A voluntary proffer is a commitment from a developer to reduce or eliminate the impact of their new development on neighboring properties or the town. Developers will note that any of these types of restrictions may impact their ability to rent or sell homes, especially if conditions change and there is a much greater housing supply. After looking at example proffer language used in other communities, we believe that 3 strike the best balance between community desires and risks to developers. First, developers could agree to include rental restrictions that dissuade short-term and student rentals in their single-family developments. For example, in the village of Toms Creek, there is a clause that renting to a single family may be allowed for a limited period of time. The lease couldn't be less than 12 months or more than 24 months within a consecutive 6-year period. These terms provide owners with some flexibility to rent their homes when needed, but these restrictions have proven to be effective at keeping a neighborhood as primarily owner-occupied. For either rental or owner-occupied developments, developers could limit occupancy by minimum rental age. This approach has been used by subsidized housing programs like the Home Program for a couple decades. Developers could also proffer design and income restrictions to help expand rental opportunities for our non-student workforce and by young professionals. This would include no 4-bed, 4-bath products and not allowing rental by the bedroom. They could also require that the actual renter's income is at least 2 times the monthly rent for the unit. These don't specifically restrict students, but they do make it harder for them to qualify. This is the kind of restriction that is being used as part of the new Midtown development in Blacksburg. In this next section, we're going to talk about how to create more opportunities for home ownership, especially at prices affordable to first-time home buyers. It was clear that respondents in our first 2 surveys saw this as a top priority. The most effective tool we identified to provide more affordable home ownership opportunities is the development of a community land trust. Community land trusts, otherwise known as CLTs, are typically nonprofit organizations. In fact, there are over 300 across the country and 2 already in Virginia. The way it works: for a traditional home purchase, you buy both the home and the land. But in the case of a CLT home, home buyers purchase the home and the CLTs own the land underneath and lease it back to the home buyer. Taking the land out of the purchase price helps significantly reduce the cost. With some additional public investment, CLTs are able to reduce the price even further to ensure that it is affordable to a low or moderate income home buyer. In exchange for making that home available at a reduced price, CLTs limit the level of appreciation so that when the home buyer is ready to sell the home and re-enter the traditional marketplace, it can be sold to another income eligible buyer without needing to invest additional public resources. So as opposed to the town's current program, both the home and the land will remain affordable in perpetuity and with continual oversight by the Community Land Trust. The second strategy is a no to low interest second mortgage program to help increase the buying power of newly hired or recently tenured faculty when purchasing a home. This program would need to be funded by Virginia Tech, but would help our largest employer remain competitive as they look to both hire and retain talent. Other universities across the country in expensive housing markets are already using this tested approach. The third strategy also involves a Virginia Tech partnership, but would be broader in scope. Many survey respondents want to see Virginia Tech invest time and resources in affordable housing. This strategy would involve establishing an affordable housing advisory group with Virginia Tech, the town, and community members to support affordable housing development. Both the recent surveys suggest that Blacksburg also needs to focus on producing affordable rental options, particularly for our wage workers and young professionals. So here are a few potential strategies. The first is to allow for both detached and attached accessory apartments, otherwise known as accessory dwelling units or ADUs. These could be apartments over the garage, a tiny house on a foundation in the backyard, or a basement apartment. The key would be crafting an ordinance that makes accessory apartments an attractive option for both homeowners, but restricts their use by students or as Airbnbs. The second strategy would help to expand housing opportunities for our low-income wage workers. Think those that work retail or service jobs, those that care for your kids at the local daycare center. It is almost impossible for market rate or affordable housing developers to produce this kind of housing and ensure a return on their investment without some form, and usually multiple forms, of public investment. Affordable tax credits, commonly called low-income housing tax credits, bring capital to the table to develop affordable rental housing for households earning less than $45,000 a year. It provides project funding that does not need to be paid back by the project. However, securing these credits requires a very competitive application, and successful applicants are always those that have brought significant local investment to the deal, such as tax abatement, donations of public land or buildings, creating access to public transit, and local matching funds. This kind of support and commitment would need to be made by both Blacksburg and Montgomery County to open up more of these opportunities for our community. The most recent example of this is the Fieldstone development on Gibbons Lane in Blacksburg. The third strategy would also require significant local investment in the form of local grants or forgivable loans for developing or upgrading an affordable rental property. This would help improve both its affordability and economic viability over the long term. Because the investment would not need to be paid back, it would reduce the amount that had to be borrowed from a private equity investor that charges a higher interest rate. Lower debt service levels allow a project to charge lower rents and still be economically sustainable. So gap financing is often provided and administered by localities through an established housing trust fund. Housing trust funds are distinct funds established by cities, counties, and states that receive ongoing dedicated source of public funding to support the preservation and production of affordable housing. They are used widely across the U.S. and often serve as the source of local match needed to attract state, federal, and private sources of capital investment for an affordable housing project. The most common forms of revenue used to support housing trust funds include real estate transfer taxes upon the sale of a property, developer fees, document recording fees, and general fund appropriations. Because many of these forms of taxation occur at the county level, Blacksburg is limited in the sources of revenue it could use to establish a local housing trust fund. After much research, here are 4 main funding mechanisms that would be available to the town of Blacksburg. The first option is an additional penny on the town's property tax to support affordable housing development. This would provide an estimated $350,000 a year. So to give you an idea of the impact on your wallet, if your home is tax assessed at $300,000, you would see a $30 increase on your local tax bill annually. The second option is an additional flat tax for each night of lodging at any lodging place other than a campground. Virginia Beach uses a $2 per night flat tax. If we imposed a $2 per night flat tax, it could yield approximately $350,000 per year. The third option is a voluntary developer contribution, similar to the idea of a voluntary proffer that we discussed earlier, that would accompany the proposal of a new housing development. The city of Alexandria has developed a formula to help determine the ideal requested amount based on square footage of the development. So based on their formula, this would provide approximately $2,000 to $8,000 for every 1,500 square foot student rental apartment built. Depending on what is built in any given year, it could provide at least $100,000 annually. The last option is a density bonus fee in lieu. A density bonus allows the developer to build more homes or bedrooms per acre in exchange for a certain percentage of affordable housing as part of their development, or as a fee in lieu to the Housing Trust Fund. The fee in lieu would essentially be equivalent to the construction cost for a developer to add these affordable units to their proposed development. These fees would then support the development of these affordable units elsewhere in the community. In some parts of the country, this tool is mandatory, but in Virginia, this approach is only voluntary. The flexibility to provide a voluntary fee in lieu is also only currently available in counties in Northern Virginia, Virginia Beach, and Charlottesville. Therefore, we would have to seek approval from the Virginia State Legislature to have Blacksburg added to the list. I know this was a ton of information, but I hope you found it informative. It will take a combination of these strategies to truly make a dent at our community's housing affordability issue. Now we need to hear from you. Please take this final survey below and let us know what your preferred strategies are. And stay tuned because we will create a final report with your feedback and will continue to provide you with updates on our progress.